Hello and welcome to this Construction News webinar. Hello, my name is Len Bingley and I'm the editor of Construction News. Today's topic is culture, careers and recruitment, and it's part of CN's Inspiring Women in Construction programme. Since the very start of this programme more than 3 years ago, it's been sponsored by headline partner Willmott Dixon. That support has been vital in helping us address the challenges that women face in what is still a male-dominated industry. Now, that headline sponsorship underscores the company's determination to address gender issues head-on. So I'm delighted we can spend some time today hearing about the culture Willmott Dixon is trying to install throughout its workforce. Of course, I'd also like to thank our other sponsors, Juice, NASC, Trad and Vanchi Construction for their contribution to the programme that we're running today as well. Now, obviously, we are still in the midst of virus restrictions, which seem to be getting more severe. We are all in different places this morning, indeed this afternoon. So please bear with us if we have any technical difficulties today. We'll try and sort them out as quickly as we can. We're scheduled to run for about 45 minutes and we were taking questions later on in the session. So please make use of the Q&A function that you should be able to see on screen. Now, please type in those questions as soon as they occur to you rather than waiting for the Q&A session to start. One reason for that is that you can vote on questions that other people have submitted to make sure that the ones that you would like to see addressed are the ones that go to the top. We'll do our best to answer as many of the questions that you put to us as possible. Now, for our panel today, we have 3 members of the Willmott Dixon team. There is Anthony Dillon, Lauren Barrow and Lianne Lawson. I'm going to ask each of those people in turn to introduce themselves and to say a little about their background. And we're going to start with Lauren, please. So Lauren, over to you. And I think, Lauren, you may be muted at the moment, I'm afraid, so you might need to start again.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Thanks. So I am Lauren Barrow. I joined Willmott Dixon 9 years ago. I joined as administrator with no aspiration really to move up the ladder or anything. I got involved with the pre-construction department and joined the management trainee scheme, which I'll talk a bit more about later on. I found out yesterday that I've just been promoted to assistant building manager, which I'm pleased about. And I am currently 33 weeks pregnant and working on site. Over to you, Len.
Thanks, Lauren. Lianne, would you like to go next, please?
Hi everyone, I'm Lianne Lawson. I'm a construction manager at Willmott Dixon based out of the Leeds office in West Yorkshire. I've been in the industry for just over 14 years now. Started out as a trainee engineer following my degree in construction management, and I've worked my way up over those last 14 years to my current position. Just finished a project in Leeds for the Department for Education, so we're just back in pre-con now, moving on to the next one. And over that 14 years, as I've worked up, I've done that with a young family as well. Excellent.
Thanks very much, Lianne. And finally, Anthony, if you'd like to say a few words. And I can't hear you, Anthony, so I don't know if you're muted.
Right. Apologies. Can you hear me now, Len?
We can, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, schoolboy error. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Anthony Dillon. I'm the Managing Director for Willmott Dixon's Northern Business. We typically have 25 projects on site and a similar number in pre-construction at any moment in time, representing a weekly spend of 4 million. I'm a surveyor by training, and despite my youthful looks, have been in the industry for more than 35 years. From a personal experience, I'm delighted to have seen some significant changes, particularly the attitude towards and from women to the industry. When I first started in the industry, it was a very aggressive, macho, dog-eat-dog environment. It was dominated by disputes, contractual claims and poor outcomes. The main roles women occupied were in regional offices such as marketing and HR. you saw very few women on site or in senior roles, and it was not an industry that I would have encouraged either my daughter or sons to enter. I now see a totally different industry where collaboration has significantly replaced confrontation. There's a lot more respect, a much better gender balance, and I would have no hesitation in recommending any of my children to enter the industry. One of the key elements of my role is recruitment and retention of the best people. And I read a great article about the Mars family and the confectionery business recently. John Mars, who was the chairman at the time, told one of the senior managers, "Your job is to get more brains than anyone else. And remember that 50% of the brains in the world are female, and brains have no colour." And I think that's a great quote. So I'll hand back to you, Len.
Thanks very much, Anthony. In my experience, I think slightly more than 50% of the brains belong to the women, but there we are. So obviously, we are all in different places at the moment. That's a result of the virus pandemic. It's made us all more aware of the possibilities of digital connection. It's made us all think about the way we work. Every site in the country has had different working procedures and things like that. Do you think that this change in mindset that's been forced upon the industry, has been forced upon us all, is going to be helpful for women's progress in this industry, in this male-dominated industry? Are we witnessing a shift, and is that going to be for the better? Lianne, perhaps you could start. Do you have any thoughts on how, that this disruption that we've all been through is going to pan out for the industry?
Well, I think probably what the pandemic's taught all of us actually is how quickly we can evolve and adapt to new ways of working, and actually probably make it more efficient. I think mindset for everyone's changed to becoming more agile in working, and those that have children or relatives that they care for. Me personally, I feel like it's no longer perceived as just a female role, particularly in the last 6 months, and actually it's become a collective male and female role to assist with childcare or looking after those other family relatives. For me, it probably is actually more beneficial for females because everyone is more open to sort of a greater equilibrium between that now, and it's more shared with the work-life balance. I don't feel that it's just perceived as a female role. Particularly this last 6 months is really showing that everyone has to adapt and change.
Yes, thanks, Lianne. Anthony, what's your thoughts as a leader within the company? What's been your experience?
Well, I think it's fair to say that most businesses have been pleasantly surprised with how smoothly the transition, particularly office to home working, has gone, and how well IT systems have held up and performed. I mean, if you'd have tried to implement, if any business had tried to implement home working as some sort of change program, it would have taken years to properly embed. And the reality is, following the government announcement, businesses had no option other than to adapt and innovate, and most businesses have successfully done that. And I think the greater flexibility that comes with this, echoing Lianne's point, will make the sector more appealing to both women and men. I think there's been some other benefits as well. I mean, there's a great saying that necessity is the mother of invention, and certainly we've been trialling, a number of technologies, and that has been absolutely fast-tracked because of COVID. And even if it's things like, Matterport scans, GoPro to kind of show customers progress or agree valuations with consultants because they're unable to visit site. So I think those advancements have been great, and I think they're going to help change perceptions and make the industry more attractive.
Thanks, Anthony. And Lauren, finally, do you have thoughts? What's been your experience of adapting to this period of change?
Well, I was actually on furlough for 3 months, so I came back and it was pretty much the norm for everyone, whereas I felt like everything had changed dramatically. I'm going to get up to speed with everything, but I've seen a massive change in how we've adapted and changed. I think it's definitely more beneficial to women, especially myself being pregnant now. I think it's quite difficult in a site-based role. That I think that's more me thinking that though. It definitely help you to become more agile working, and when you want to, if you can work from home if you need to, and the technologies that we've got does allow you to do that. But not just only for women, like it's for everybody as well. Like Lianne was saying, and the last project I was working on, my nana recently got diagnosed with dementia, so I was having to help out care for her while we was getting some proper care involved. So I was having to leave quite early some afternoons, which obviously added pressure onto the job role, because obviously if you're not there to see things, and you're missing out on things, where the technology would have made that a lot easier. So I think that transition would definitely be beneficial to everybody.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lauren. Anthony, just picking up on a point there that Lauren made about that sort of flexibility. I know that from previous discussions with Willmott Dixon that there had been a program of rolling out flexible working across different sites. I think it was a pilot program that there was the intention to roll that out more widely. Obviously, the disruption that the COVID crisis has brought, and people being on furlough, like Lauren talked about, a lot of plans have been thrown up in the air. How has that worked for you guys at Willmott Dixon? Have you been able to roll out that more flexible working more broadly?
I think there's no doubt it's had some advantages, but it's also thrown up some challenges. So you're quite right, Lem, that prior to the pandemic, we were well into our journey to roll out agile working on our sites, and it was generating some really positive results. And for us, agile working is about a bit of give and take on hours and places of work, and something that works for both the business and the individual. But some of it we've got, I'd say, behaviours that are ingrained within the industry, and they need some challenging. But I think some of the benefits of the pandemic hitting is that it, as we've already said, it drove a need to adapt and innovate, and it's fast-tracked some of the things that we were already piloting. Whether that be clearly a lot more people working from home, the introduction of shift patterns to maintain social distancing, people being flexible with the times, perhaps to help with childcare or to avoid peak travel periods. So we've learned a hell of a lot, but we've still a lot more to learn as a business, and how we can, embed agile working across the whole business. I think in terms of the future, agile working is key to ensuring people's well-being. And it's going to be key to retention and attracting the next generation to both the construction as an industry and us as an employer. We're in the process now of understanding the current picture and what learning and feedback and sharing that around the business. I think one of the things we have learned is, and people are learning, is the art of possible, and that is challenging some of those old traditional views that are held in the industry. I think it's also worth adding, though, that albeit there have been some, clearly we've shared some of the benefits that COVID and the pandemic has fast-tracked some of our programs, but there's some challenges. I'm seeing more overtime worked on our projects at the moment to kind of catch time lost and ensure we hand projects over on time. And then there's a whole issue of people working in isolation and the challenge of mental health. So, clearly there are benefits, but I think there's a lot more work to do before we kind of, properly strike the right balance and get it embedded sustainably within the business. Thanks,
Anthony. Lauren, I think you said that you had been through the Willmott Dixon management training scheme. I'm sitting here in my mid-50s. I can't really remember what it's like to think about career prospects. You're obviously a fair bit younger than me by the looks of things. What attracted you to working in the construction industry? What made you made you think that's a career for me? And also, have your views on the industry changed as a result of going through something like that management training scheme?
So, as I said earlier, I joined Willmott Dixon as an administrator. with no really career aspect to move up the ladder. And it was only really through working with the people around me. I was helping out pre-construction, particularly the estimating department, and it was only really through getting involved in what they was doing and then really seeing something in me that pushed me to go onto the trainee scheme. And for anybody who doesn't know what the management trainee scheme is, it's basically a bespoke scheme to yourself, so it can run between 1 to 5 years. Mine was 5 years because I had no construction experience or qualifications. So it just depends on your experience and if you've got any qualifications or transferable skills. And you go through all different placements within the business. So it basically makes you a better all-rounder. You have an appreciation for what each member of the teams do, and you get a whole host of benefits as well, including the university fees are paid for. After so long, you get a company car or a car allowance, study leave, and a whole host of other stuff. So it's a really good scheme, and I embarked on that looking to pursue a career as an estimator. But after doing my first placement as a site-based role as a building manager, I decided that I really like that instead, which is the beauty of the scheme. I've also had another management trainee, Abby Belfield, who worked on Tameside Wellness Centre with us. She was pre-construction, working in the bid team as well. That's the career she wanted to pursue, but then after doing the site-based role, she's also changed. So the beauty of the scheme is you get to actually have a go, because you don't necessarily know what the role entails, because there's not that much information out there and the schools don't really know too much about it to give people enough information and career advice on it. So the scheme's really, really good, and I basically changed to go to building manager. Yeah.
Are you able to say what it was about working on site that you found appealing? Because it sounds like that you had a change of mindset while you were doing that program.
I really like working with people. At first, I was a bit nervous to go onto site, having never stepped foot on a site before. But everybody's just, it overwhelms you really how nice people are and wanting to help you. Not just only the Willmott Dixon staff, but the supply chain and consultants as well. People, if you've taken interest in what they're doing, people will take time out of the day to show you, which is really nice. I like seeing the progression, and for me, I get great job satisfaction out of handing over a project and seeing how happy they are with the build that we hand over.
Well, thanks very much, Lauren. Lianne, I think you're in an on-site role as well, aren't you? What's been your experience? What's the reception of that you've had from your colleagues on site in your career?
Yes. So I've started out, as mentioned, as a trainee engineer, and I've moved up through the build manager to construction manager or project manager position that I hold now. Very similar, to be fair. I think if you hold a mutual respect for your fellow colleagues and supply chain on the site, you'll get on well, and you'll actually be able to form a very nice and cohesive team that work together. I think one of the things that I particularly love about my job is when I sit in pre-construction planning the project, there's an aspiration and a dream in my head of how I want the project to go, and with the customer at the end, how we want it to look, and to be able to sort of bring anything between sort of 1,000 to 2,000 people through your site gates and get them to work towards that dream that's in your head is quite a sense of achievement. And as Lauren said, one of the best bits is actually on that day of handover, when you see the end users coming into their building and the excitement that they have. It's quite a nice feeling to know that you've been a part of playing that.
I imagine so. One of the things that we're talking about in today's webinar is about culture and how it changes. Are there things that Willmott Dixon or perhaps other employers that you've worked for have done that have been particularly helpful in bringing women through in the industry, or tips that you would offer to companies that are trying to address their gender balance? What's been your experience?
I think starting out from a young age and coming into the industry, I think actually finding yourself a good mentor, or as a business who are taking females into that role, or even young people, is actually to give someone a really good mentor, and you'll find someone that believes in you to be able to help deliver. I think a supportive management structure as well. I was really lucky to have a manager that took a bit of faith in me, being the only female going into the business that I joined back 15 years ago. He took a bit of a punt with me, and he obviously saw something in me, which hopefully has come to fruition now in the position that I hold. And I think as females as well, when we're offered opportunities, it's to not be scared to have a go. I think quite often as a female mindset is we're more nervous about sort of putting ourselves out there a little bit more. And when you've got a company that is supportive of that, or a manager or a mentor that's always sort of prepared to push you forward, they've certainly been things that have helped me over the last decade to progress. I think actually just having an open approach and setting measurable targets for both males and females. I think when I first joined in the industry, I felt that I probably had to work a little bit harder than my equivalent peer to be seen to be doing all right. And that perception certainly changed. Now I can see that anyone that comes into the industry, we are treated a lot more equally. And it's for the better, but I think what's quite important is for companies not to have quotas for diversity. I think it's good that there's set targets because it drives people to think wider in terms of their recruitment policies. But actually, I think people do that when they when you're trying to employ. It's actually just about having a diverse workforce, the sort of workforce that has an equal balance of male and female is actually the best thing for businesses and customers. So it's more about actually having the right person for the right job. And I think if firms go into recruitment with that mindset, then actually they will get the best people for their business.
That's very helpful, Lianne. Just to pick up on that point you made about mentoring, it's something that we've heard time and time again in the webinars that we've been running this year. And indeed, we did a specific webinar earlier this year looking at mentoring, offering advice about how to go about finding a mentor and things like that. So that's something which is available as a recording through the CN website. So if anyone is interested in finding out more about mentoring, that's a good thing to go and look for on the CN website. If you just type in mentoring in our search bar, I'm sure it'll pop up as one of the first hits. Just moving on now. I don't know who would like to pick up this question, but how do you think Willmott Dixon has succeeded in challenging preconceptions? This is an industry with a reputation for certain ways of behaving that perhaps aren't particularly encouraging for everyone who might come into the industry. Anthony, perhaps if you could say, how has the company addressed trying to sort of change hearts and minds to be more open and more sympathetic and understanding of everyone in this industry?
Yeah, thank you. I'll give you a list of some of the initiatives we've got underway, and I know both Lauren and Lianne have been actively involved in some of these, so I think it would be appropriate for them to perhaps pick up and just expand on some of the detail. But just to kind of give you a flavour of some of the things that we've got underway, we've got unconscious bias training, and we're just over 40% of the way of rolling that out across the business. In 2016, we created a gender diversity steering group, which Lauren has inputted into. Historically, and we've done a lot of work with schools, particularly girls' schools, and I know both Lauren and Lianne have been heavily involved in that. To I suppose reinforce the point Lianne just made then about targeting an increase of women, we had various initiatives to increase the female applications for our management trainee scheme. And it's really pleasing to see that, when we actively started instigating some actions in 2018, the applications were 298. The following year, it increased to 587. And the most recent application for 2020, the numbers were up at 716. So I suppose it's great to see that, that we're seeing some results from the initiatives we're introducing. We've introduced a lot of new material to promote careers. A lot of that is film and digital based. We do a lot of work promoting and supporting STEM events, and I know Lianne's been involved in much of that. We're obviously supporting great initiatives such as the Construction News Inspire Me event. And I'm personally delighted to have supported the previous events in both Manchester and Leeds, and I know Lianne again has been heavily involved. We've done quite a lot of work with inclusive working environments, female-only facilities, recognising period dignity. We've been working with a social enterprise called Hey Girls. We've been creating quiet wellbeing rooms that are available for people to either breastfeed or express in, or pray, administer medicines, or just take some time out to de-stress. I know Lauren's been involved in a workwear project that we've got underway, so she'd probably expand on that. Educate the Educators, another programme. And we're just about to roll a poster campaign out, if in doubt, leave it out. So it might be worth just Lem asking Lauren and Lianne maybe to, I know they've been personally involved in some of those, just to maybe put a bit of meat on the bone.
Well, thanks, Anthony. I'll do just that. Lianne, if you want to pick up on any of the points Anthony's made, we're all ears.
Yeah, so I think particularly the STEMnet or the WISE, the Women in Science Association, it's something that I've been actively involved with now for probably the last 10 years. And I think that's really quite key to be able to change those conceptions of the industry. And as Anthony's mentioned, that isn't just female, that is male as well. I think people perceive the industry to be a pure trade route and not necessarily always realise of the academic side of the route that you can take in, which like I've come through. I think particularly with the educating the educators, it's something that I really feel quite passionate about. When I did my dissertation paper many years ago, it was on why the industry was so white male dominated, and actually did stem from careers advisors actually just not knowing that our job role existed and perceived construction as just a trade industry. So what's really refreshing is that we're able to sort of work with the schools and get involved with the schools and change those initial thoughts and actually open the industry up to many more people that probably didn't even realise it was a really good career choice to go down.
Thanks, Lianne. And Lauren, I think Anthony said you've been involved in lots of different aspects of the company's policies and how it's been trying to sort of test the mood of employees. What's been your experience of being involved in those sorts of programs?
Yeah, so when they first rolled out the gender diversity focus groups, which each LCO had their own little focus group where they'd look at just getting the conversations going really as to how we can attract and retain the best people, and how we can also change how we, I suppose, bring them into the business, and change that mentality on them. And also it's also having the unconscious bias conversations and respecting people, because something that I might find not respectful, it could be different for somebody else. So it's just get them conversations flowing so that we could put procedures in place which is then take up to board. So that was quite interesting to be a part of, always looking to improve. I've also been involved in the sizing of workwear. It's been postponed due to COVID, but they're trying to get like ladies more flattering workwear, because they'll fit you better, because they are quite big. They have got lady size clothes at the moment, but it's just to make it a bit more flattering. But they obviously got postponed with COVID, and I've only just had an email about it, which I don't really think I'm the best candidate for it now, knowing that I've got a beach ball. So I'll have to pass that on to somebody else to have a look at. But also as well, we do lots of stuff. All the trainees are construction ambassadors, and we do lots of stuff where we go into schools, and it is trying to change that preconception of the roles that are out there. And we can stand up there and be like, what role do you think that I do? And they'll start shouting all sorts of stuff out, especially particularly in primary schools as well, which is quite interesting to be a part of. But it's just changing that preconception of how people view it, and then also letting them, well, obviously before COVID, letting them come onto site and getting a flavour for it as well.
Great, Lauren. It sounds to me as if you ought to stay a part of that workwear group, bearing in mind you do have this unique perspective on perhaps maternity workwear. I don't know. Yeah. Shouldn't be overlooked, I wouldn't have thought. We've got some questions now coming in from our audience, so I'm going to turn to those now. One of the things that Lauren mentioned was that things have been postponed as a result of the COVID crisis. One of the things that many people may feel is postponed is their career development. That that perhaps the world has moved into such a sort of crisis mode, for want of a better word, that normal development isn't happening. I don't know which of the panel, perhaps Anthony, you could start. How has Willmott Dixon tackled that business of making sure that women especially still are able to make career progress or have sensible career goals in this difficult time?
Well, I suppose one of the things that we've historically done a lot of is tackling schools and promoting careers that are available in our industry. And of course, that is something that historically we went into school premises to kind of talk about careers, and that's something that we just haven't been able to do. But what we're looking to do there is, I mean, historically we used to use a lot of film and digital content. We went into the schools anyway. So we're currently working with an online provider to actually, so it isn't such a huge step. We're looking to actually tailor that offer so it can be delivered digitally to schools. So we're currently designing an online work experience program that's aimed at young people in years 10 to 14, which rather than it being done on site or in the office, it can be done in the classroom or at home. We're also working on other programs that can form part of the class time, and other programs to do with people that have recently left education. I think one of the challenges that we are facing, and I did the recent management trainee interviews, people coming to the end of their program, is that the management trainees really benefit from that close association and working alongside people. And as far as the site teams are concerned, we've been able to maintain that. But where people are working more remotely, that is clearly presenting a challenge. So that's something that we are aware of and are kind of actively working at. How can we kind of strike the balance between, following government guidelines, but ensuring that particularly our young people are getting the necessary mentoring and support and training that they need.
I'm going to move on to another question because there's a fair few here that we need to cover and we are running out of time. There's a question here about one of the reasons that women are underrepresented in this industry, especially at higher levels, is that they leave when they start a family and they don't come back. What is Willmott Dixon doing to support that, in terms of encouraging paternity leave and things like that? Lauren, that must be a subject looming in your mind with the pregnancy that you mentioned. Do you think Willmott Dixon is doing the right things to support you and encourage you to come back after you've had your child?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been quite overwhelmed with how supportive they've been. I came to the end of my trainee scheme, and obviously being off on furlough for the 3 months, I was thinking, is that going to impact it, and are they not going to promote me? But I've been promoted, and they've been really supportive with the maternity. And that they've even said that when I come back, they'd look at possibly putting me in the office for a bit, so that you can get familiar with the environment, get back into it type thing, because you don't know how you're going to feel. So they've been really supportive with it. Like, I've been quite overwhelmed with it really, because it could have been that they turned around and said, we've not got the capacity to promote you right now, or waited until after maternity. Yeah, so I don't see that being a problem.
That's good to hear. Lianne, what's your view on how the company supports women in the long term?
To be fair, since I've joined Willmott Dixon, it's been a pleasure. It's Anthony actually undertook my interview for when I came to ask for the job, and my daughter came up in that interview a little bit about what she is in my life, and part of why I do what I do is to inspire her to realise that anything's possible. And Anthony and the rest of the business and my managers are all fully aware of my family, really supportive of that. But that's what I was trying to say earlier, is actually it's not just myself, my full team that worked for me. We all had young families. And I think actually when you've got a really strong, cohesive, committed team that work together, you all actually pull in for each other. I wasn't the only one that wanted to go and watch my child on the sports day. You know, some of the other team wanted to go and see their children in the Christmas concert. And I think actually the business is really good at just balancing everyone's work-life balance as well, and it certainly therefore makes it, as a female, less obvious that you're wanting to go and see your child in the Christmas concert and things.
Absolutely, every parent has the same interest in their child's development. I'm sure it's not a male-female thing, or certainly shouldn't be. There's a question here that's got a few thumbs up, so I want to put it to the panel. It's saying obviously larger firms like Willmott Dixon are making great strides in the gender diversity sphere. As you go down the supply chain, obviously sometimes we don't see such good practice. What can a firm like Willmott Dixon do to encourage wider adoption of these kinds of initiatives, the sort of things that we've been talking about Willmott Dixon doing? Is that possible? Can Willmott Dixon influence companies further down the supply chain?
Well, we've certainly got a direct influence on our supply chain partners and our consultants, and to be fair, a lot of those work really closely with us to you know, support what we're trying to achieve, and it's a two-way exchange. You know, if there's businesses beyond that, you know, we're more than happy to help and share the, you know, some of the initiatives and the journey that we've been on. So, you know, if there's anybody on this webinar that works for a business that feels that they would like to get in touch with us, please do via CN. We'd be more than happy to assist as best we can.
And Lianne, yeah, go ahead, Lianne.
Sorry, so I just interject. I think one of the things as well, when we've got such a very close supply chain partners that we do have, I actually last year went to a local high school that I was invited to with one of our supply chain partners. It wasn't a Willmott Dixon organised event, it was one of those, and that was for their recruitment. And they wanted me to go down and speak to them because there were sort of three men talking about dry lining, and then they wanted some female input. And I think actually with our supply chain, because we work so closely with them, that's nice that they're wanting and they're seeing that the diversity issue needs addressing in their own business, and they're actually using main contractors to assist them in that as well.
Lianne, you might want to pick up this question as well, which has had a couple of thumbs up. There are still perceptions that the industry requires long hours, and then that work-life balance is perhaps more difficult for women than it is for men. That may not be what the questioner was suggesting, but I wonder what you think, Lianne, about that sort of long hours culture. Is it something that you've experienced in your career?
So I'm a very big advocate on my projects that our evenings are our own, our weekends are our own, and they spend time with the family. And I know that was something that was quite instilled with me when I joined this business as well, that actually the work-life balance is really important. And I think if you work hard during the hours that you're on site, then you don't need to put in the extra hours. Obviously, there are days, and I think this could be related to any career in any profession, where sometimes the extra hour or the extra mile needs to go in. But I wouldn't perceive that it's any more than normal. I think if you work effectively and efficiently in the hours that you're on site, then actually you can go home and switch off and enjoy that family time a little bit more. And again, I think when you've got a really strong team and a great support structure around you, it is actually quite achievable.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I think Willmott Dixon's flexible working programme, and I realise that's not been rolled out across all sites. I think that's gone down quite well in helping to manage that process of overwork. That there's a more considered way of of approaching what needs to be done each day. I think that's the case.
Yes, it is, and you know, from a person, you know, I kind of made comments earlier about overtime. The reason I know how much overtime is happening in the business is that I personally authorise it, and that's not despite what some of my colleagues might say, because I'm a control freak. I don't want our people working overtime. I want our people getting home of an evening, spending time with the families, and I don't want our people working weekends. So, you know, I'll only authorise it. It's absolutely necessary, and then I'll ensure that people get adequate time off in recognition of them putting their families putting themselves out for the business.
Thanks very much. Lauren, you described how you ended up on the management training program. Obviously, it sounded to me as if the company had sort of spotted your potential and encouraged you to apply. But do you have a view on what works best to make sure women get fast tracked when they have talent through the business?
It was because other people seen something in me, but that was more so because of my lack of confidence, and everyone around me seemed to have had qualifications and they'd been to university, and you know, they was experienced, and I wasn't, and I think that was more my own perceptions of I can't do it. So it's trying to break that mentality, which the people around me helped me to do. But just if they're showing interest, and you know, and they've got the drive, then I think that's all that they need to do, really.
Yeah. Thanks, Ron. Lianne, do you have any tips on what works to encourage women to participate in programs of career advancement when, as Lauren was saying, perhaps sometimes they're not filled with confidence when they're in an environment where there are many men around them, in a male-dominated environment, is what I mean. What works best, do you think?
I think actually, as I found throughout the last 10 years, it's actually that mentor. It's having someone that you can openly and speak honestly with about any concerns or reservations you might have about going for things and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. I think the one bit of advice I would give to anyone that was following my footsteps is just be brave. People will naturally presume you can't do things, and you're probably your own worst critic at times for that as well. And I think actually when you step out of your comfort zone, you surprise yourself and others what you're able to do. And I think if you've got a really good mentor or a very supportive manager, they will see that potential in you and actually just give you a little nudge in the right direction. And then you'll actually realise that the world is yours to go at.
I entirely agree. And obviously that issue of lacking confidence is not a female or male thing. I wasn't considering going to university. I started working in a paper factory when I was straight out of school, and the company that I worked for encouraged me to go down the university route, and it had not occurred to me before that it would be open to me. So I can speak firsthand about the value of people, of mentoring, and of people encouraging you to explore the potential that you have in yourself. We have another question here. I think we can squeeze in the time available. Anthony, perhaps you could pick this one up. Does ageism affect women more than men? And what can a company like Willmott Dixon do to make sure that ageism is not a particular problem for women?
Personally, I don't think it does. I think for me it's all about ability and attitude. I know that when we did some analysis looking at particularly women leavers, a lot of people weren't actually returning to the business beat, and we actively kind of came up with a bit of a program to target women who had left our business and perhaps thought, you know, for whatever reason they couldn't return, and that proved really successful. So my focus has always been very much, I've never really been focused on anybody's age. For me, it's always been about age and it's all been about ability. You know, we've got some people who are quite a young age who are in quite senior positions, and I think in some organisations there's a perception that, you know, some of that stuff is time served. The experience counts for a certain amount, but you know, in terms of the judgments we make here, it's very much kind of based on ability.
Well, thanks very much, Anthony. As you say, those returner programs can be really key for women and men coming back after career breaks, can't they? So I think that's obviously the key. Well, we've come to the end of our allotted time. So all that remains for me to say is to thank our panelists, Anthony, Lianne and Lauren, for their insightful comments and for sharing their personal experiences so frankly. It's been very interesting from my perspective, and I hope it's been interesting and inspirational perhaps for those people watching. Our next webinar in the Inspiring Women programme is scheduled for 15th of October, and the topic for that debate will be, I think there's a slide on screen now, will be men as agents of change, and what we're looking for there is how men can help improve the career prospects for women in this industry. So please sign up for that, or perhaps find a man who you think ought to go and watch it and encourage them to sign up. So thank you for watching. Thanks for our panelists. I hope you found today's event useful. From all of us here, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.